Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Let's start here. I have actually something Trump did a good thing, I think, yesterday. Executive order. But he's just such a POS. And so let's start here.
Trump cashing in with crypto. In just minutes, President Trump is expected to arrive at his golf club outside Washington for a crypto industry fundraiser with David Sachs. David Sachs, of course, major tech investor and Trump's crypto czar. And Trump is set to rake in millions and millions in political donations from this. The price tag for admission, in fact, is $1.5 million a plate, which makes this one of the most expensive dinners with Trump ever.
So imagine you're paying $1.5 million for a seat at a dinner, right? Whatever the dinner is, it's not worth it. But it's the fact that Trump's there. So people are paying $1.5 million to sit at a dinner table to have Trump, an event that has to do with cryptocurrency. And, Trump is into crypto, but I don't think he really even knows what it is because he's not thorough about things, right? People told him how he can make a killing at crypto, and he has. He's made billions. Trump has made billions already and is making more because Trump monetizes everything, and he gets people to tell him how he can make money on his brand, his ability to flim-flam people and sell them that he is a person of substance, right? But what's really scary about this thing is that Aaron Burnett is going to take this in a direction that I'm doing the same. Like, I thought this is the way I was going to do this clip, right? Like, I watched this beginning part. This is all I watched. And my wife and I went for a walk. And then my wife had talked to her friend who the hospital basically killed her husband, which I have more details about that. I covered that. I told that story a bit. I'll do that after I get into this thing here. And so I copied this with my phone in case they didn't put it up. And YouTube didn't put it up, but Aaron Burnett put it up on Twitter. That's why I have the whole clip here, and I'm able to use the arrow, right? I can't use the arrow. I can't do this when I copy it with my phone. I have to put the voiceover stuff in Premiere Pro, and I have, I'm not taping my screen when I put it in Premiere Pro, so I don't have the ability to, my arrow, it doesn't exist. Big, giant, colossal cursor. But anyways, big, giant, colossal cursor. And so then I came back, and I had it taped on YouTube TV. And so I went back and watched the whole thing, and it's really a good piece here. This is good news. This is quality reporting. And Aaron Burnett sucks. Like, she's just, CNN sucks and she sucks. And I said this in recent videos, Trump's made news real again. He's made the fake news real again by just being a total frickin' loser and just being bad at all this stuff, right? And so, let's get into it here.
And it's actually just the first of two major crypto events that Trump is holding this month. He announced online a second event that's coming in just about 2 weeks from now.
So then I watched this a second time, and I'm like, holy shit. He's got this fight thing. This is with his fist. It's fake, right? Just like, in a way, crypto's fake, but, it has maybe a use in terms of moving money. Crypto has a way of, it's a better way of doing currency than paper dollars. It's cleaner, we all have electronic devices or whatever, but it's still, it's imaginary. It exists. It doesn't even exist in the real world. It exists in cyber world. But here he is with this fight thing, and they're still pushing this when everyone should know by now that he wasn't assassinated because he doesn't talk about it like he should. They don't sell it like they here they are with this image, like try to remind you of it. But how Trump talks about it over and over again. Like the guy is the most braggadocious person ever. He's the biggest self-promoter. He's like Don King level. That guy used to be the fight promoter. and he's even like more gaudy. I mean, they were buddies, I think. But Trump is really, I mean, he brags all the time. He just talks about everything, and he barely talks about that because he knows it's fake, right? Like it's just, and probably knows that if he talks about it too much, that eventually somebody might say, "Hey, this thing is fake." But here it is. He's got the thing going here.
And that dinner is for the top 220 investors of his meme coin. So to get to that, it's a contest. How much money can be brought in? He's reportedly made Trump and his businesses.
Okay, so he's going to release his own cryptocurrency, or he has already. It's a meme coin. People are going to buy millions of dollars of his meme coin, right? Which is going to increase its value and whatever. And, I mean, it's going to be eventually it'll be worth nothing because of Trump. It's only going to be based on his popularity and his, there he can have investors. I have to take a sip of my tea. My throat's a little bit, in the morning it's like a little bit tight. But, but, his meme coin, people will buy millions. So the $1.5 million a plate is probably a lot less than the 250 top Trump meme coin buyers. So, his coin is going to have all kinds of value increase by all these people buying lots of it and then having a dinner with him. At least for them, they could sell it immediately after the dinner, which would probably be a big, it's going to be a pump and dump type thing. But, people are willing to pay all that money, $1.5 million to sit in a room with Trump. Like, that's the sickness here, right? But then, she's talking about his going to his Mar-a-Lago, his country club that's near Washington, D.C. And where I would take this. So if you know me, what would I say? Because I just made a video yesterday. I mean, you guys who saw my video yesterday would know I would compare this gaudy and $1.5 million frickin' opulent frickin', economic orgy to him telling people that they can't buy their daughters the proper amount of dolls, the amount of dolls the daughter wants. He was saying, you guys need to do austerity. Why this fucking greedy motherfucker, this job of the head motherfucker is having these opulent, well, let's go more farther into it here.
Is more than $1 million so far in trading fees alone. So as that is going on, it's worth thinking about this. Ever since Trump was elected, he's been very busy supporting crypto. It has made him and his family, crypto has, billions of dollars.
I want crypto. Look, I'm in favor of crypto.
I'm a big fan of crypto.
We will make America the undisputed Bitcoin superpower and the crypto capital of the world.
We're going to do something great with crypto.
And those crypto chickens are coming home to roost in Trump's own nest. He has, well, just over the past week, his son Eric was in Dubai for a $2 billion crypto deal. $2 billion crypto deal for Eric Trump in Dubai. Where does that come from? Well, Donald Trump Jr. also just spoke at a crypto summit. And of course, Trump held his own crypto summit at the White House. But while Trump is making money, in this case.
Okay, so, he has made $1 billion on Truth Social. So Trump is a techno person. And the one thing I could say about Trump as a business person, I say that he has only one skill, which is to promote himself. But the other thing he's able to do is pivot. And if something's going to make money, he tries to get into that market using the Trump brand. And so, it's not the best skill, but it's something. Those are the two things. And so he got these tech people to convince him. Crypto is probably the reason he got reelected. Not just crypto, but he embraced the tech people. He embraced Elon Musk and then these things with censorship that Zuckerberg and these other people did. And he had all these, high-level tech billionaires that came around him and supported him. Elon being the big one. But all the rest kind of fell in because Biden censored them on Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg and the rest of them. And so he invested in crypto and he got his own Truth Social, which I had said he should have done before the election. Like, he didn't do it till after that whole debacle. in 2020. I said he should have got his own. Like, they were canceling people left and right, and I'm like, they're going to cancel Trump. At least he needs to have his own social media, because for that period of time, nobody knew what he was thinking, and that was like he was, how much he used to tweet in the middle of the night. He used Twitter like it's going out of style, and then all of a sudden he couldn't do anything, and they were putting words in his mouth, which, he was deplatformed like Alex Jones for the whole post-election thing, and then that, that was a nightmare. But he did, he was late to the table, but he got his True Social thing going, and that was, it sucks because it's all Trumpers, but it's worth now because he won the election. They did a public offering, and it was worth $2 billion. And so he made $2 billion on that, or whatever it is, and then another billion on crypto. And now it's going to be more. So he's monetized the shit out of his presidency. Now for crypto, you only need one. Maybe, you need one coin. Like it's just a digital way of having, the blockchain. But there's thousands of cryptocurrencies, vanity currencies, these things, right? Celebrity currencies, meme coins like Trump's thing. And, it's a pump and dump type situation. Some of them have better value. Like there's one, Ripple, I think uses a lot less energy to mine. Or, whatever it is. There's these coins that are better than other coins. And they will probably end up, something like that will end up being the one that becomes the world reserve currency. They'll change the name of it in terms of the technology behind it. Like these coins, some of the coins are very energy heavy. This whole thing that Trump wants to do with AI and build these AI power plants, they're going to need a lot more electricity. That's going to be the big thing. Or they're going to have to reduce the population and use that electricity that used to go to millions of people. If they cut the population in half, all that electricity can now go to AI and robots and, cryptocurrency and things like that. To have that kind of situation. But anyways, he's made, billions of dollars on this stuff. So then she takes it this other direction here, which I was like, oh my God, this is what I would have done. Like they're not copying me. This is not, it's the obvious course that they would, if you were constructing a good, you're going to shit on Trump on this thing, right? You'd compare his cryptocurrency opulence. Like Trump is making bank, and he's going to continue to make bank throughout his presidency. And that's all he cares about. Him and his family are raking in billions of dollars. He's a legitimate billionaire, and he's monetizing the shit out of his position. At the same time, he's doing this thing with dolls, right? And so Aaron Burnett takes in that direction. I'm like, how does she not suck now, right? How does Aaron Burnett and CNN not suck? Well, I've already covered this. Trump has made it easy for them not suck by just fucking blowing his, the whole presidency up with his incompetence and his bonehead bullshit, right?
Case on crypto. He's also tripling down on the idea that Americans should be comfortable with less because of his trade war.
The children will have $2 instead of $30.
I'm just saying they don't need to have $30. They can have $3.
All I'm saying is that you don't, that a young lady, a 10-year-old girl, 9-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl.
You think a 15-year-old girl plays with dolls? I mean, she's a sophomore in high school, right? Is that?
Doesn't need $37. She could be very happy with 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
This is.
So I was going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to play you I have a compilation from yesterday. I'll play it at the end of this thing. Well, I guess let's watch the Trump thing, and then I'll play the compilation. Wait, let's go to the end of this thing. I'll play the compilation then. I haven't made the compilation. I have to go back into I'm right now rendering the Journey series, so I don't have the compilation even. It's a meme. I mean, the meme of him saying all these different things, right? And I was going to play that and then compare it to, him saying you can't own all these dolls, right? And then Aaron Burnett does the same fucking thing. Are you kidding me? Like, they get to do these kind of, like, hit jobs because Trump sucks that bad. Trump owns 16 golf courses. And he says he wants these girls only to own 1 or 2 dolls. Cheap shit from China is a big thing for Americans. And a lot of the Americans that voted for him, they're very materialistic, which, I mean, it's just, that's their thing, right? They're like the materialism that exists in America. A lot of people go and buy cheap shit at Walmart. These, poor Republicans that, like Trump, in general, right? So, having cheap shit from China, which he said, as he says, you can't have, which I'll get into because my meme, it's better than what she just showed you, but she showed you all those things with the dolls. But then she comes up with this. Like, I didn't even know there's a Trump doll. Of course there's a fucking Trump doll, right?
It's interesting. I mean, this is from a man who, at the height of The Apprentice, was there in Times Square at the nation's, at the time, largest Toys R Us, hawking his own doll, which I will point out was made in China. And tariffs are hurting doll makers, right? Most of them are made in.
So that's huge to get the hypocrisy here. That this guy, look at him. Look at this fucking smug fuck and his big fat fucking Jabba the Hutt doll here. And like, who wants to own a child? Bankrupt Toys R Us behind him. And he's trying to hawk his doll. And then he comes out now after charging people $1.5 million for a plate for cryptocurrency, which he knows nothing about, but is making billions on it, right? Like, I was around when in the truth community, people were talking about Bitcoin. And at the time, I think it was like 10 cents. And I was around when Bitcoin was, 10 cents, and I had no idea what it was. Didn't have the ability to buy it or whatever, and I didn't have the insight to do so. But I was around when it was $1 and $10 and all those things. And then it went up to $100. I was like, holy shit, right? So, and just without the ability to, financially to invest in it. But I could have. Like, I was around then. There were people who were around when Bitcoin, knew of Bitcoin when it was just starting. But, he built his brand. He has a brand. And so when he was able to get into Bitcoin, they still were able, the crypto community needed a president to do a bunch of shit, right? XRP was in a lawsuit like that stuff at its Ripple. And they had these other guys who were anti-crypto in the Biden administration. And so they knew that they could, with a crypto president, and he was easily bought, right? Regardless of what the crypto currency, this is the stuff where they'll be, they'll get rid of cash, which is, a way a good thing. But then they'll be able to turn your finances off anytime they want. Everything will be digital. People will have gold and things in storage just in case the economy craps out, but that's not going to help them because, it might help you a little bit, but like food will be more valuable, right? When everything goes down because, the idea of currency, if the economy completely implodes and we're in a post-apocalyptic, where bartering. There's one guy, one of the first truthers I listened to, he's kind of one of those, old school, almost like Amish people. And he said that in the future, the size of a man's junk pile will represent his wealth, which is, everyone will have, there won't be any new stuff being made, won't be any, doing any manufacturing, right? But Trump came out and said these things, which I'll show you again, the meme in a bit, about dolls. But of course he has a fucking doll, right? And this, the whole thing, and they got it, this is where CNN can do real fucking news. They can do real reporting.
In China. Take Barbie. According to the Telsey Advisory Group, the price of a Barbie just over the week that she attracted, so that's Tuesday to Tuesday, as of last Tuesday, is up 42.9%. And today, Mattel, maker of Barbie, pulled its guidance for the entire year, withdrawing all projections for future performance because they say the outlook is just too uncertain. They can't project anything. It's a huge move by a major American company, the maker of Barbie. Mattel is saying Trump's trade war is making it harder to predict consumer spending, what people will buy, and they are warning prices will go up as they move more production outside of China. And this may not be about buying, 30-some dolls for a child, as Trump is saying. It might be really, for many people, just about buying one or two when you start looking at price increases like that. These increases for some families will mean their kids go without.
So the thing is, Trump never said, I'm going to do tariffs, we're going to bring back manufacturing, and it's like he's not a visionary, okay? Because, he wouldn't have been elected then. And who knows what his angle is in all this, what he's getting out of this whole tariff thing and what his real view on it. But the problem with it is, and again, I'm not an economist, and I, don't value this kind of stuff. It's not important to me. Business stuff. I'm not a businessman, in that sense. And so, I don't have much interest other than how it affects, the apocalypse, right? Like this economy, our debt-based economy will go until it doesn't go anymore. But I know it's going to end. The most reliable sources for me, the Sajmark system, the masters of the system, talking about the ending of this system. Everything ends anyway. Like we know everything ends. Every empire eventually collapses. There is no perpetual. America's not going to be the same thing in 100 years, 200 years. We've even, you look at all these countries around the world. There were a time when every one of these countries, and the place themselves, because the people have changed, had some kind of an empire, right? The Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, the British Empire. The British Empire is still kind of going, a different way. America's an extension of that, right? But there was the Chinese Empire. There was, there was a guy, Genghis Khan, whatever, it's Genghis Khan. They have that show on Netflix, kind of interesting show about that guy. And he was dominating that part of the world, right? India, during the time of the Mahabharata, was the number one country. In fact, when the Europeans first went to India, there was a guy who was hugging the coastline, like they didn't have the ability to travel into open ocean, and this trader from India, like a merchant, had these 4 bigger vessels. This guy had the guy who basically kind of discovered India. The 4 Indian vessels were like 4 times the size of his ship, and they can go in the open ocean. And they guided him to India, right? This guy was looking for, and we're going around the Cape Horn, I think it is in Africa, and then going up into the the ocean there, and going into that part of the world. Because they weren't able to travel around Africa, right? Of course, it gets cold down there. It's like the South Pole area. But anyways, there's these countries have all had empires, and you can find ruins of great civilizations. Sometimes they dig them up. Some are under the ocean. These things. Of course, there's the pyramids, right? The pyramids are beyond anything that we could build. There was higher developed people living here that just left because they were not from this planet, right? There was humanoids. There's, that created this current race that we are now. So empires collapse. We know that. It just happens. There's ruins. I show this thing. I got a bunch of pictures of this ancient ruins, and they dig up these civilizations, right? And some of them were more technologically advanced than we are, even on planet Earth, right? We had, things that are more advanced than the stuff we have now. A lot of this stuff, of course, was reverse engineering and things from extraterrestrial vehicles and whatever, or things that were gifted to us. And so, this civilization will metamorphosize, and change. We're in a transitionary period, and what that's going to be, a lot of people are going to get left behind, and there's going to be massive population reduction, all these things, right? So that's just there, like that's in our future, and it's just a matter of when. The issue really is a civilization making people better or not? Is our system making people better or not? And it certainly isn't. We see idiocracy. That's why Trump is president. Trump is an idiocracy president. Like, he's just the most narcissistic, the most gaudy. Him pitching his own doll. I mean, the guy's just so, he's the biggest bragger, the biggest, narcissist out there. And people have soaked it up and bought into it. And, a part of that is his gaudy materialism. And then he comes out, the 16-country club owning motherfucker, and comes out and tells the American people, you got to get rid of your cheap China shit. And, the vision that he is proposing, and I don't know if he really believes in it or not, is that manufacturing could come back to America. But if you're going to have manufacturing, you're going to have factory workers. And unless you use robots, which will be, inevitable, I guess, at some point, and there is robots, technology out there for some, robot technology is used in the manufacturing world that wasn't before. But then when that happens, then China is going to raise the currency level because what they have is they have a low currency, a devalued currency, and they have 1 billion people, just like India does and some of these other countries. They have lots of poor people who will do shit jobs, shit factory jobs for almost nothing and work for slave labor. And so that's why people manufacture shit in China. It's evil, it's not right, and it's, the people that are in these manufacturing jobs suffer horribly. And China treats its people like shit. And so if you're going to compete with China, you have to have basically immigrants, because Americans are so entitled and so fucking, we're all used to a certain level of lifestyle. And so we can't have the manufacturing world. I've said this over and over again, and every economist that knows this, that if they're going to manufacture shit in America, it's going to be way more expensive, because it just will be, for all those reasons. And so there is no end goal. And like I said, Trump is going to be out in 4 years. So whatever vision he has, he'd have to get the Democrats to buy into it. And they won't. And so, it's just a bullshit vision, because his vision is centered around America manufacturing things and exporting them. And the only way to do that is to devalue the American currency so that people in other countries can afford cheap American shit, right? And then you have to have slave labor here that will put that shit out there. And so, Trump doesn't have a way. He says we're going to be really wealthy. Well, only from the standpoint that rich people will be really wealthy and corporations will be really wealthy. But the average American, your currency will be so fucking devalued. And your labor will be so, what you're supposed to do for work now, instead of some cushy service-oriented job, it's going to be tough manufacturing jobs. And so it's a big fuck you to the American people. And he's saying it right here. You're not going to be able to own as much shit for a guy who's as materialistic as anybody else. And so, it can't work. What he's doing can't work. And Americans are going to suffer. And at some point, they're going to realize he fucked you, like the Trumpers. Remember, I had this, I said Trump fucks you again in the title of my video. And some guy wrote, I didn't know he fucked me the first time. So I did a whole bit on that, right? I got a comment from somebody. Yeah, you don't know he's fucking you, right? But you must feel it.
But tonight, the administration is continuing to claim that these so far elusive trade deals are just days away.
I think we're very close to some deals. I can say that.
I showed this to my wife. This guy's such he looks like he's Mike Myers or some Saturday Night Live guy, acting like as a person, like some guy with some comedian with a playing a fucking, a boring financial guy.
That I am highly confident that we have 18 important trading partners. We'll put China to the side.
So they keep on promising, in a couple more weeks, we're getting these things done. But that's what scammers do. That's what grifters do. It's just the thing that we promised you is coming right around the corner. It's never going to come. And so when this hits the American people, when there's less stuff, there's going to be less stuff coming here, and these companies are choosing not to manufacture shit in China, but they don't have factories to manufacture it anywhere else. And so now they're all scrambling, and there's going to be stuff just disappearing, and stuff's going to be more expensive. And so all these small businesses that Trump is throwing under the bus as well. And so when this goes down, people are going to turn on Trump, they're going to have to. And I think Trumpers will at least, will be like, hey, come on, master, please, come on, Lord and Savior, what's happening? And then, then we'll see what Trump does. But I think he's just going to say, fuck you, because he can. Because, he's going to walk away with, his family's going to walk away with a fortune in crypto. They can move, they have, country clubs in other countries, like in Dubai and, Scotland and things like this. They're not even, Trumps are international now. And a big part of that is his, bullshit stuff that he's doing with, monetizing his presidency.
Of course, companies like Mattel are waiting to hear about a deal with China. That is the most important deal. Last year, half of all Mattel toys, just as one example, were made there. The deals are crucial for America's top industries. Today Ford pulled its 2025 guidance. said Trump's tariffs could have a significant impact on the bottom line, which is really amazing. I mean, this happened in a week. Their entire world seemed to fall apart. It was a week ago that General Motors suspended guidance. And hours after that, I talked to the Ford CEO, Jim Farley, and I asked him, I mean, are you going to have to suspend guidance in a week? What's going to happen to you? This was 1 week ago, and he said this.
We know exactly what the tariff bill would look like. You know, in terms of cost for the company, we know offsets. Next week, I think we'll be able to tell people kind of what the tariff bills for Ford would look like, the most American company, what kind of offsets. What we don't know, Aaron, is what are the import competitors going to do?
Yeah. That was a week ago. That was a week ago. I mean, this.
So he's destabilized the economy, which we know this would, because nobody knows how this is going to go, right? Like Trump has, I think it will go this. You know, it's like when you try something, but you have no idea. You know, in any scientific experiment, you have inputs. You input something, right? If you're working with chemicals or you're working with something, you know, even when you're making, you're cooking something. That's something most people can understand. You can add something to it. You can add onions. You can add, peppers. You can add various spices. You can add various things, right? My wife and I are eating these powderized mushrooms. This company makes these powdered mushrooms, and I started using. We found out about umami as a flavor, and that was coming from shiitake mushroom. But then we found that they had 10 different mushrooms, and mushrooms have all these, value and all this stuff. It's a whole thing I could talk about more. But we've added these mushroom powders to everything. It's enhanced the flavor of all of our foods. Of course, we're getting nutritional benefit from it. Again, not recommending things, but it's something that, But you don't know how something's going to taste if you add a new ingredient, a new spice, a new, something else, like, whatever, stir fry. And every time you add something, it's going to change something. But if you know what that thing tastes like beforehand, you can kind of figure out, well, this is what it'll, how this will mix with other things. Chemicals, it's a little harder. You can make something explosive. In an economy where there's, part of the X factor is the choices that China is going to make, the choices that these companies are going to make. What are the choices they're going to make, right? And what do they have over you as a country? And China could fuck America. Like Trump was talking about, China's not doing very well. If China goes down, they're going to take us with them. They can totally devalue the American currency. And that's maybe what Trump wants, right? And so, he's got lands and properties, he's got the crypto, and they could, flood the market with, they could devalue the dollar and then, switch over to Bitcoin, and then Trump will be a fucking trillionaire or something, right? Some of these people. And so, whatever his plan is, it isn't about you or making America great. And, he's just throwing things up against the wall, and like they're not knowing how they're going to go. He's not a visionary. He's not backed by God. He's not somebody with a golden touch. And so, it's not going to happen, right?
This is the world that we are living in now. 1 week later, Ford coming out and saying, sorry, we got to pull our guidance for the year. Trump.
So let's go back to this one here with his fucking doll, right? This whole fucking doll thing has got his fucking little doll. She's got her fucking thing. Trump has this little doll, and it's a little fucking Trump. So like I said, I watched the very beginning of this clip with Aaron Burnett, and I was just going to use that part. And then I was going to do my own thing, which this is the meme I made yesterday. I was going to contrast Trump's Jabba the Hutt, this Jabba the Hutt motherfucker, this fat, sticking everything in his ghoul hole, materialistic, gaudy, 16 country club owning M&F'er, and all the other buildings he owns. Actually, I just searched it again. He has over 30 buildings and 20 golf courses. So these big towers like Trump Tower, Vegas and New York and things like this. So the guy's got 50 real estate properties and, multiple private jets, of course, now Air Force One, and all these, he's just a materialistic fuck. And he wants your daughter to go without her dolls, right? So let's watch the clip here.
On a trade deficit with China for things we don't need, for junk that we don't need. rich.
But you said some dolls are going to cost more. Isn't that an
Sure. I don't
acknowledgement
think
that some
children-
prices
I don't
will
think
go
a-
up?
I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls.
So small businesses say they are being hurt by the Chinese tariffs, and some could be forced to shut
And
down.
many businesses are being helped.
Are you
Get the
considering
automobile
tariff
business.
relief for small businesses?
Why do you always mention that, you pick up a couple of little businesses? What about the car business? They're going to make a fortune and save a lot of money. We don't need to feed the beast.
So in my compilation, the whole thing, that you don't need Chinese junk anymore, which American people didn't campaign on that. Guess what? You guys won't get any more cheap shit from China and other poor countries that have a really low currency and have low manufacturing costs. And he's not going to bring back manufacturing, so there's no reason for it other than collapsing the economy. You look at this, and then the other things he said. Fuck small businesses. Your daughter doesn't need all those dolls, right? I mean, his granddaughter goes on her private country clubs and golfs and makes, TikTok videos and gets 1 million subscribers overnight, right? I mean, the kind of stuff that, his family has. Like one set of rules for me, and then the stuff about don't feed the beast, which is something, the beast being something I've talked about for years now, and all of a sudden he's concerned about the beast. You are the beast, right? You embrace the beast. He's somebody who's very materialistic. And the thing about it is, I've noticed this in my own life with rampant materialism. Well, first, let's just talk about the CNN thing with Aaron Burnett. Like, they get to approach a video the same way I would. Like, that's crazy. Because there always been the people that I mock for their poor coverage and their inability to tell the truth. But now Trump's given them the ability to tell the truth. In his hypocrisy, where he's telling you that you're going to have to give up some things for his plan that he didn't run by you, that he promised you he's going to lower prices, and that's not going to happen. It's happened maybe, briefly, but the overall effect of this is tariff tax. And then, not only will there be less stuff, but the stuff will be more expensive because there's going to be more demand and less supply, which you all know, these are basic economic principles. When there's more supply than demand, the prices go down. When there's more demand than supply, prices go up. And the tariff tax and the whole thing. And then there'll just be things you can't get anymore. And that's just the start of this, right? And that that the people that run Trump and run the world aren't looking to make America great again. Like, the whole idea was that Trump was somehow going to, he's going to overpower the controllers and the powers that be, and he was going to fix something, their designed deep state plan to take America down. If they're actually trying to take America down, the powers that be, then they're going to take America down. There's a reason for it. And it's that we can't, we're too resource heavy. We have 25% of the world's resources, which is Trump is lying about when he talks about how we're getting screwed over because it's silly. And we're gluttons and we're stuffing our fat ghoul holes, which is not what Trump's concerned about, right? Trump is doing whatever he's doing and saying, oh, you guys are going to have to give up. You can't buy your daughter as many dolls and so many other things, right? There's so many things that people get that you don't know, that you don't read the back of the label, but it comes from China or some of these other countries. And, he wants to get rid of a trade deficit, which can never happen. They're unrealistic goals. And so the outcome is world economic destabilization, maybe a complete collapse of the global economy, maybe World War III. Who the fuck knows what's going to happen? But it's going to happen soon, and it's going to be, painful for everybody. And Trump is showing himself to be a complete boob, like a complete bonehead, like just a moron. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He can make bank just by, failing. Like, he fails upwards all the time. Like, he's the ultimate, like Kamala Harris was good at failing upwards, but Trump is even worse at it, right? I mean, even better at it. So when I started doing the Sajmark meditation, I had just, after 3 tries, got my bachelor's degree in human services. And I moved from Massachusetts to New Mexico. I drove across the country in a Toyota Tercel that I got because I was some kind of new buyer, right? Like some kind of new buyer deal. And I got a shitty deal in the car, in terms of interest rates and things like this. It had no air conditioning. I was moving to, a hot place in the West in New Mexico. And I drove across the country in this car, and I had all my belongings in it. You know, I was 31 years old, I believe, at the time. 31, 20, 30, 31. And I had, you know, all the stuff that I owned in the world was in the car, a tiny Toyota Tercel. And so, you know, I went to India. I was made a preceptor for the Sajmark system. I came back, and I eventually got married, and my ex had 2 kids already, and then we had another 2 kids in New Mexico. I had a master's degree, and we went to leave. We moved from New Mexico to Idaho, and we're driving out of New Mexico, and I remember driving in with a small Toyota Tercel, and driving out, driving a 26, one of those big U-Haul vans, you know, trucks that it's just they take a van engine and they put a big fucking box on the back of it, right? It's just like a 16-passenger Ford van or something, Chevy van, whatever they're using, and they put a big box on top of it, so it's like, you know, the things go slow as hell. And I'm going through the mountains, like this very mountainous area, you know, through Colorado and up through Idaho. And, you know, in a slow van, a slow truck. And my ex was not good at driving because she got her head stuck in an elevator and fucked up her, or whatever. That's, you know, no more to say about that. And she's in the back I have 2 kids in the cab with me. And then there's another 2 kids and a van full of like a big minivan, and we're loaded. Everything's like there's no room for anything. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened? And I could feel the physical weight because the moving truck was having trouble going up these mountains. I'm going up like 50 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour. I mean, it didn't have a lot of power, and the thing's just loaded down, and I could feel the physical weight, like, you know, and I'm like, what happened, right? You know, like, you know, I was by myself with a small car full of shit, and then I had all this extra stuff. And over the years, I've noticed the burden of material goods. Whenever you get something, you have to keep it, you have to store it, you have to, you maintain it, you know, all these things. Farmland, when you own farmland, you have to, you know, you're responsible for the land. If you have fencing and pasture, you have to dig up weeds, and you have to, you know, bush hog it, and you have to, you know, you have a big yard, you got to cut the lawn, you have to maintain it, you have to, you know, gardens, I mean, all these things. You know, it comes with a burden. Materiality, the more you have, the more of a burden it is, the more expensive it is to keep, you know, upkeep it, right? Things like this. You know, people get these things and they're like, well, you just pay for the you know, the car, the boat, or the house, and it's, you know, no, there's taxes, and there's, you know, there's you need a new roof, or you need this, you need that, right? And you don't have time to deal with anything else. Don't have time for, you know, your family. You don't have time for, inevitably, you don't have time for any of these things because you're just, you know, your time's getting sucked away from you through, you know, if you're not making the money to maintain all these things, you're maintaining them, right? And so it's a hard thing to do. Like, materialism is not what people think. More is not necessarily better for every person, and really not for any person, right? So I believe that we don't need all this cheap Chinese shit or whatever, but that's not why Trump's doing it, because he's the most materialistic person. He just is. He's just fucking a materialistic piece of shit, right? And, you know, for himself, but he doesn't care what you do. Like, oh, you guys suffer, right? Let them eat cake. I mean, this is the ultimate of him being royalty, for him to come out and say, you don't need it, but he's just one of these materialistic people whose worth is based in his trophy wife, or his porn star, or his fucking, you know, gaudy plane or gaudy apartment. And like, look at you know, they bring there's this great scene from I think it's the second season of The Apprentice, maybe the first episode. I went and found the thing, and I showed you the clip in one of my recent videos. I'm not going to find it again, but they have these challenges, and the team that wins the challenge gets to go up to Trump's tower, penthouse in Trump Tower, and Melania's there, and it's just all this gaudy fucking gold, just like over the top, just icky, you know, just overwhelmingly, just visually, and just, it would just be shitty to live there. And then of course you need all these things to be dusted, and, you know, all this stuff, right? And then you have to secure it because, you know, I mean, you have millions of dollars of like jewelry and shit and all this stuff in your, like all this stuff, like real expensive stuff. You know, you have to make sure it's safe from robbers and all that, you know, all these things. But anyways, Melania's there. She comes down, and one of the people goes, "You're so lucky," and she goes, "He's not lucky." And so, but this is the thing, right? This is, people who value materialism and base their self-worth on what they have. It's a very immature thing that they do, right? Very, we're going to get into that with Trump. Let's cover that next because I want to get into the one good thing he did. But there's two other things I want to cover here quickly, and then we'll get into the, he did this, he signed a gain of function. This, we'll get into that in a moment. Okay, so this happened. I got two little funny things here.
Nation's capital also making a big announcement in terms of Alcatraz, reopening that prison. You can look live now here at this as Air Force One on the ground at Joint Base Andrews. We'll soon see him take those steps back to another.
So here's the Truth Social post. Rebuild and open Alcatraz. For too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminal offenders, the dregs of society. Now, all these people that Trump deals with are murderers. And he himself, right? He murdered people in terms of the, doing it legally as president. But it's murder, right? Your government can't fucking absolve you. Neither can a church or a person absolve you of your sins. And, murder is murder, right? And you can't, and Trump has done horrible things to people. Like, he's just a horrible person. He's committed crimes. A guy who has that many lawyers his whole life. Trump has had teams of lawyers to get him out of trouble. Because, all these rich people make their money by skirting the law or bending the law or avoiding the law, right? Manipulating the system. That's what Trump does. He's a grifter. And so for him to call out other criminals, he's just a hypocrite. He's a piece of shit. He's a selfish person with poor character qualities that, does bad things. And as president, you murder people. And, it's legal in terms of the, American law, but it's not legal in terms of divinity. So rebuild and open Alcatraz. For too long, America has been plagued by vicious, violent, and repeat criminals, the dregs of society, who will never contribute anything more than misery and suffering. When we are in a more serious nation in times of the past, we did not hesitate to lock up the most dangerous criminals and keep them far away from anyone that they could harm. That was the way it's supposed to be. No longer will we tolerate these serial killers who spread filth, bloodshed, and mayhem on our streets. That is why today I'm directing the Bureau of Prisons, together with the Department of Justice, FBI, and Homeland Security, to reopen Alcatraz, substantially enlarge and rebuild Alcatraz to house most ruthless and violent offenders. We will no longer be held hostage to criminals, thugs, and judges that are afraid to do their job. This guy is a fucking child. He's a child. Let me show you this clip from Kyle Dunnigan. So this is Kyle Dunnigan. He has Dunnigan. He has a funny YouTube channel. It's got a lot of good stuff. He doesn't post as much stuff anymore, but does good impressions and things. And I saw this clip a while back, and the Trump thing made me think about this. Being like little boys, right? He's talking about Elon Musk here.
He does 8-year-old boy stuff. Some people, like kids talk about, but don't do. He actually does. It's like, oh no, when I'm older, I'm gonna make it the fastest car in the whole world. And then they make it the biggest rocket ever.
He's got this great way that he imitates Elon Musk's laugh where he says, ha ha ha, like you write it.
And then I'm going to put my really fast car in my really big rocket and then just shoot it all over the universe. And then he did that.
Elon Musk launched his red Tesla Roadster into space 6 years ago. Where is it now? Which is hilarious, but they're like little children, right? These guys are little boys. See, Trump's fascination with the past is when he was a little boy, right? Trump was a little fucking boy. Here's Alcatraz. And, people who are obsessed with the past, like when they were in high school, like that was their glory years, they want to relive those times. It's oftentimes they didn't know the truth of what was going on. Because there's always shit, right? But this was called The Rock. It's in San Francisco. And it was a horrible prison. And it had all these currents, like, the prisoners would have to swim to shore, and there's like sharks and, all kinds of, like getting out, escape from Alcatraz was the whole thing, right? Like you just couldn't get out of there. But pretty much every prison now, I mean, there isn't like there's a lot of prison breaks, right? There's no reason to build this prison. There's a reason they closed it down. It had horrible living conditions, and was not, it was not sustainable. Now it's like a national park that people go and visit, and to see how badly the prisoners were treated. But in terms of maximum security prisons and the prisons they're building, like he has a fascination with prisons and locking people up. But he didn't lock Hillary up when he had the opportunity because she was like him. She's in his class. She's one of his people. She was a former president's wife and a secretary of state. And he said he wasn't going to do it. And he came out later and said, I could have done it, but I chose not to because I knew how it would affect morale. And it isn't your job to decide who goes to prison or not. Like, you're the president. You're not the attorney general. If she committed crimes, she should have gone. And Joe Biden pardoned everybody. Trump isn't going to go after those people after all the things he said that they went after him for, right? That he's, we'll see if he even goes after those people, even after all that bullshit. But anyways, he has this unrealistic idea of the past being great. And I'm going to get into this with my wife and I. We were talking on today about, I have more information about this woman basically her husband being murdered by a hospital. Hooked up to a COVID respirator, things that everyone should know, like, are fucked right now, right? But, this idea that you can trust the medical community or the government. And, like I said, I'm going to come back to this, but the idea is that, you have the mind of a child. And so you think the world is different than it is because you're innocent and you're not cynical yet and you haven't experienced the true evils that people will do. And I'll expand on that in a moment. But going back to Trump stuff, he has this idea of like manufacturing and prisons and let's reopen Alcatraz. Like Alcatraz is just a symbol of a year, yesteryear, where he can be hard on people with the same moral integrity that he has, because he hates himself right deep down. Like these people hate themselves. He's a criminal. He wants to punish other people for his criminality, his inner criminality. But it's always lower people who are at a lower socioeconomic power level than he is. It's not the people, his contemporaries. And so, like, he's a child, like this whole thing. They do childish shit, right? Even Elon Musk, that's funny. He's doing things that he wanted to do when he was a child. Like these, there's some point where you realize, just through the process of maturity that these things aren't, there for you. Like they're just the things of a yesteryear. And that you thought things were better than they were because you were naive of what was really going on, right? And so, like, this guy's a fucking child out there. Let's reopen Alcatraz. Let's call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. These are like little boy ideas. They're little boy things. Like, not knowing the trouble that it's going to cause, all the maps that have to be revised, all the things, just doing things that are, unnecessary just because he thinks that the yesteryear that he imagined was better than it was. As a childish person. Like Trump is really immature. So then there's one more thing here. So one of my viewers sent me this as well.
As Pope? I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice. No, I don't know. I have no...
That would be my number one choice. Again, the guy craves power. Like, it's not jokes. Like, this isn't a joke. He knows he's not going to be Pope. But he, just like you say, wanted to be king. Like, he doesn't want a democracy. He doesn't want a constitution. He's not defending the Constitution. In all that I showed you, that meme, he also said that he doesn't know whether he needs to defend the Constitution or not. I don't know. I'll talk to my lawyers. That's what a fucking criminal says. That's a guy who's, trying to manipulate the Constitution. That's a guy who thinks he knows more and gets it better than George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and the Founding Fathers. Like, that's a guy who thinks he's, publicly saying those things. Others might think that, but he thinks he's, not that I think those guys are great, but they certainly were better than this fat piece of fucking job of the head motherfucking hypocrite, right?
I have no preference. I must say we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's very good. So
place to New York. So the guy's a fucking absolute child, right? Like, you should all see this. Trumpers should probably see this by now. That the child is fucking around with the world's economy, destabilizing it. You know, this is why he's a chaos agent, because he's a fucking toddler. You know, I mean, he's got the emotional resolve of a toddler, his impulsivity, and the inability to, withhold gratification, and he has the mind of a kid in 8th grade or 12-year-old kid. Let's open Alcatraz again. Alcatraz, that'll solve everything. That's Alcatraz. All these criminals. Let's build prisons in El Salvador, and anybody who criticizes me will ship off out there and fucking blah, 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 blah. Okay, so in that, Trump did something good here. Now, America can't be saved, and they can't fix any percentage of the problems. They can't fix the underlying problems. But whenever they do something that I agree with, I point out, whether it's Biden or Trump, I just can't just be shitting on them all the time. When they do something that what I agree with, and many of you agree with, and he did something here. But I'll tell you how it isn't fixing the problem. I have this story to tell and a bunch of things to talk about here at the end of these things. But this is the first piece here, right?
Tell the speaker. We have a number of executive orders for your attention today, sir. The first relates to gain-of-function research. Gain-of-function research is a type of biomedical research where pathogens are adulterated, viruses are adulterated to make them more potent or to change the way that they function.
Gulf of America, he's still fucking this is a child. All right, we get it. It happened. It's over. It's not great. It's just some fucking thing. A child. It's a little fucking show and tell project here.
Many people believe that gain-of-function research was one of the key causes of the COVID pandemic.
Many people believe. Why don't we fucking know? I mean, this is what I've said since the beginning. So I agree with this from this standpoint. Number one, we should know how this happened. And it's a biological weapon. My experience of having COVID 3 different times, I had 3 versions of COVID. They weren't like diseases. They were like something else. People have had them and had weird symptoms and weird effects. There are times I felt 100% cured and better. And then it came back around. That night. It was weird. It was weird stuff and weird things. People's taste buds and kids' toes turning purple and just weird shit. Right? And then all the effects of it. And the after effects. And this piece of shit, Trump, he did Operation Warp Speed and all that other stuff. So he's he fucked up on COVID. But what I had said was, if something kills 7-8 million people, wherever it is, and causes the economies to be closed, and I mean, God knows how many kids starve to death from, when you have these economies around the world, these really poor countries that depend on imports and exports, and they close down the world economy, and these kids are going to all starve. It's like economic sanctions. Children starve when that happens. People starve. And so God knows the full effects of COVID. But it was an act of war. And if China did it, then they should be destroyed. It should be everyone should be fuck you, China, you did this to us. Every country in the world should be pissed at China. But they're not, because this was a agreed upon action. I mean, that's the only logical explanation. It was agreed upon action to release a biological weapon and to do what they did. That's going to cause the death of old people and young people, and again, of course, the follow-up to that with the, what they dealt with in terms of the vax and all these things. But what you'll have is young people won't be able to reproduce, and they'll be going to be weaker and sicker, and old people are going to be killed, just to get rid of their, all the stuff that were owed them, Social Security, Medicaid, across the board, and this is a depopulation measure that they all agreed upon. Otherwise, China would be fucked, right? And if something like this happened, you don't even know. How do you not know? And so if this was a lab leak like they said, then you would say, all right, stop fucking around with these things because they're not secure. If you have something that you're experimenting with, fine, as long as you can control it. But once you lose control of it once, you can be never trusted again, right? And so, this wasn't happened organically. This was a lab leak. I mean, that's what they're trying to say it is. It's what Trump is saying, and many people are saying. But is it intentional or not? How do you know it was an accident? You don't know. So, and is it an accident because they all agreed upon it? So it's bullshit what he's doing because he knows what the fuck is up. But at least this is a step in the right direction, because they shouldn't be fucking around with things like this, because they're eventually gonna come out. All these diseases that they're manufacturing are going to come out one way or another, through power outages, through, human error, or intentionally, probably more often intentionally.
Struck us in the last decade. What this executive order does, first of all, it provides powerful new tools to enforce the ban on federal funding for gain-of-function research abroad. It also strengthens other oversight mechanisms related to that issue and creates an overarching strategy to ensure that...
Because you could have one of these foreign pharmaceutical companies make a disease, then make a vaccine and medicines, pharmaceutical medicines to combat it, and then release it, right? Like, that's what they could be doing. And they would do that because they're for profit. We'll get into all that later.
Biomedical research in general is being conducted safely and in a way that ultimately protects human health more.
It's a big deal. Could have been that we wouldn't have had the problem we had. Right?
A lot of people say that, sir.
If
there he is. He's started signing it with his big ass
just
fucking...
done earlier. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, okay, but you fucked it up when you did Operation Warp Speed, so don't... he's still a piece of shit, but he did the right thing here. Like, in a bullshit way.
Like, they've done studies on Girl Scout cookies where they break them down and find out what's in them. Oh, holy shit. They're fucking toxic as fuck. Thin Mints being the worst offenders, 5 flavors of Girl Scout cookies contained... back up. Contained levels of glyphosate and heavy metals above EPA water safety limit.
Okay, glyphosate is what the toxic ingredient is in Agent Orange and Roundup, made by Monsanto, with all the side effects that Vietnam vets suffered from. So glyphosate, which it wasn't. It's now in foods, right? It's in these various, GMO foods and shit, like Monsanto's corn, that has, we know what that does to your gut, right? They're genetically modified corn. But, they're still producing it, even though people already know. I mean, this is stuff that's been out there for a while, that they put the pesticide right in the corn itself. And all the other stuff that goes with Monsanto and all these things. But glyphosate's one of the worst things. And it's in these fucking cookies, right? I mean, it's funny because it's so fucked up. But then this one here. Okay. So I want to get into this story with my wife's friend here, because this all ties together with Trump and all of this stuff. Not Trump. I mean, Trump as a non-factor. RFK Jr. as a non-factor. So RFK Jr. says this.
HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. addressed an often divisive topic within the scientific community, and that would be the cause of autism in children. RFK Jr. making the following remarks at a news conference.
This is a preventable disease. We know it's an environmental exposure. It has to be. Genes do not cause epidemics. They can provide a vulnerability. You need an environmental toxin.
Okay, so that's a huge point, right? Because he's admitting that autism just didn't happen because kids genetically are just getting it. So something has to be introduced into the environment, like I said before about an experiment, right? So something has to be introduced to cause this, right? Let's talk about gain of function. You have a disease, and then you change it, you add something to it, you subtract something from it, whatever it is, genetically modify it, right? Monsanto, these things. And you put something into the environment, and it has an effect, maybe multiple things. And so autism is caused by human greed, human manufacturing, chemicals, whatever it is, right? We all know what we think it is. I know what I know it is, right? But you guys, you know what you think. You might know the same thing. And he knows it. He knows the same thing I do because he said it. We'll get back into that in a moment.
In 3 weeks, and probably we're hoping in 2 weeks, we're going to announce a series of new studies to identify precisely what the environmental toxins are that are causing it. This has not been done before. And
they should have, like this is what I said before. I have very little faith in him or Trump or them to tell the truth here. Because, well, let's Well, let me switch over to voiceover before we do that. But here,
We're going to do it in a thorough and comprehensive way, and we're going to get back to with an answer to the American people very, very quickly. We're going to follow the science
by September,
no matter what it says, and we will have some of the answers by September.
And among those who support RFK's push to determine the cause of autism is Jillian Michaels, the host of the Keeping It Real podcast, joining us here. Jillian, always.
What's happened to her face?
Good to see you. So RFK, the secretary, they're pledging that he will have some answers by September. It's ambitious. But what are your thoughts? Are you encouraged by that? That someone here that is within the health department, the secretary from this administration, actually wants to find out more about autism, the cause of autism. Your thoughts there?
Very much so.
Very much so.
Listen, can there be a genetic predisposition? Of course there can. But what he's saying is, if genes load the gun, it's something environmental that is pulling the trigger, and he wants to get to the bottom of what that is. Autism has skyrocketed over the past 2 decades. It used to be 1 in 50 20
I'm going to
years
show you this because I covered this. You guys might remember it. A now banned video when COVID first happened.
ago. Now it's 1 in 31 kids. And it's crazy that not everyone is elated about the fact that he's trying to get to the bottom of this.
So, that's another piece of this because I don't think he's going to tell the truth. I don't think he's they'll give him that kind of ability. But if he does tell the truth about what this really is, which we already know, then it'll be ignored just like the COVID stuff because I'm going to get into that. Let me just segue into I got to show you one more thing here. Okay, so when COVID first came out, I was trying to shit on a government agency. And so I brought up autism, right? So this is a graph I didn't see then. This is a graph. This is from 1992 to 2007. You can see how it's going up, right? This is the number of cases. This is the graph I did show, right? So in 1970, it's 1 out of 10,000. And then in 2018, 1 out of 59. And now it's like 1 out of 30, especially in certain places. And what I said was, the agency that was in charge of this, right? Because something happened here. And here's another thing I didn't say then. This is just something that came to me as a good idea. The majority of kids who are diagnosed with autism is between the ages of 2 and 4. But they show signs of autism almost immediately as a baby. And so so there's an environmental factor, right? It used to be, way back here, it used to be 1 in 10,000. These were a number of cases, 1 in 10,000 here, right? And so something is being given to young children, or young children are getting exposed to something, probably almost immediately after being born or a short time after, that's causing this effect, right? Something that between the ages of 2 and 4, although earlier signs can be observed at 18 months of age. So, as a child, when they're just laying there, incapable of crawling or doing anything, they might have autism, you don't know, right? And so something's happening to them as babies. Fucking logical. I'm a logical person. I'm a practical person, right? Like, I am. Like, you guys can see it. Like, I don't care about these things because I think that this, for the good of all, the society should come down. Not that I want that, but it's, obvious that this society is fucked up, right? I've known it since I was a kid. And I've had a sense that this thing is going to, need to go tits up sooner than later. And then my meditation system that I believe in more than anything else is a resource, says this is part of a divine plan, which I have had some personal confirmation of, that, the system has to go for something better to take its place. And so all these things, right? I'm on board with it. I mean, I'm not psyched about it, but I'm not attached to any of these things. And so when you're in a system that's completely upside down, completely inverted, demonic, then you can't blame people for their reactions. I mean, you can talk about how they failed, and how they, you know, aren't embracing their higher nature. But, you know, we're all struggling with that, right? Like, I'm much more compassionate than the average truther and average person. And I'm not picking sides. I'm not a left-right person. I'm far beyond that stuff. And so I just look at what makes common sense. We're being lied to all the time. And what's common sense is something happened here in 1970, and then again in 1995, and then continued to happen to increase this number. So this kids weren't like born with some genetic flaw. It's something that's, you know, there's something being introduced to their system, and, you know, all this stuff here, and it's being introduced early on in their, you know, sometime when they're babies, because it's happening before the age of 4. And, you know, most of the kids who get diagnosed, it's not when they contracted this disease of autism, right? It isn't like these kids are just, you know, one day they're age 4 and the parents bring them in there, oh, they're autistic. You know, at some point something was introduced to their body at a very young age, because again, they're not eating, you know, they're barely eating any food, you know, they're, you know, what's happening. There's a lot of interventions and things that happen in the hospital itself. They get like vitamin K in their eyes. I mean, I talked about this. You know, my ex was very adamant that, you know, when our first child was born, that I defend him from these people that take him away and do a bunch of medical shit, and a lot of it fucking goes south, right? And so, you know, one of those things is they get vaccinated. So that is something you have to look at seriously, right? As a possibility. I'm not saying it is, because of, you know, whatever YouTube would think about that or not, right? But that's something you'd have to look at, right? And so RFK Jr., you know, when he was being more of a truther, he was going on all these interviews, and he had done good work as an environmental lawyer. And he had learned to read environmental studies because he had to know his shit, because he had to argue it in court. And so he became an environmental lawyer, and he learned to read scientific data. And when he did this, these women were showing up at his speeches and things that he was doing, and they were pleading with him to look into autism, which he didn't want to do. But he just, everywhere he went, they were pleading with him. So he looked at the scientific data, and they were asking him, you know, it seems like there's a correlation between that and vaccines. And he said, yeah, that's what it was. In all these interviews, he talked about this. This was his story, that he believed that from the science that he looked at, which was a lot of it, that this was the cause based on these moms who were freaked out about what happened to their kids. You know, their kids were perfectly fine and normal, and then they would melt down. And usually they knew what it was. So some of these moms, you hear them talk about it, you know, the kid's given something like the vax and immediately melts down afterwards. You can hear all these videos and testimonies of women saying this thing, right? And so something like, again, just logically, you'd have to look at all the things that are given to kids, and so it'd have to be some sort of medicine, because, you know, is it those benign carrots with no salt and no sugar you feed them from a jar? Is it baby formula? Is it something in the air that's affecting these kids? Or is it something that was given to them by the medical community? And so, you know, in that, let me switch over to voiceover. You know, what I said earlier, right when COVID started, that was a video that YouTube took down or whatever. But I said an agency that was in charge of, you know, American medical stuff is presiding over this autism epidemic. And you're going to trust them about COVID? Because that was a no-no, right? But I was saying that, and then they made it illegal to say that. Like, you know, they made it where you couldn't say that on social media. You know, everybody pushed back against, I mean, these social media platforms all were basically threatened to stop people from saying anything that would go against any of these types of agencies, and certainly these pharmaceutical companies. They withdrew your ability to speak the truth about these things, or what you believed, or your experiences, and any alternative opinion, even if you were a doctor. They were banning doctors and people from being able to say what was going on, right? And so that was really fucked up, because if you're going to look at, like, there's an autism pandemic where now it's, you know, down to like 1 in 35 or whatever it is, 1 in 40, 1 in 50. In certain cities, it's like 1 in 20 something, right? people, who are in certain areas where the kids are more, prone to get extra medical, whatever it is, right? And so these parents are raising these kids who've been fucked, who are not. I mean, there's something out there that's some pathology, something that's, some toxin that's being introduced into these young babies' system, and who's powerful enough, who has enough hold on the government and the media to be able to get away with that? Because why wouldn't they find out? Like I said, why wouldn't this agency find out what the fuck is going on? When you've had that many kids, you go from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 30, 1 in 40, even 1 in 100. Like, why wouldn't they find out it was 1 in 500? Then all of a sudden there's an epidemic of autistic kids and kids who are close on that spectrum. There's kids who are on the spectrum and there's kids who are close to it. And then all these other issues kids are having, chronic issues, kids getting cancers and things. Why wouldn't they find out what's going on? What's causing that, right? Because cancer could be prevented if you remove carcinogens from their diet and the environment. There's things that cause cancer that are out there causing cancer, right? This isn't something, you just got cancer. You had something that went into your body that produced cancer. And a lot of people are saying it's parasites. That's a whole other thing, right? So there's that. Your weakened immune system. And so there's all these things out there that are preventable. And there's only a couple of industries and power groups out there, like I was saying about Monsanto, right? Monsatan. They have this corn that has fucking pesticides in it that is destroying people's guts. And yet they're powerful enough. They owned enough politicians and they owned enough media. They had influence over media companies that they were able to, avoid. When everyone else knew that it's Monsatan, we call it Monsatan for a fucking reason, right? But even after we know things, it doesn't matter. It's still being used. People are still using Roundup. They're still using glyphosate, knowing what it does to people. Like, this was all the way back in Agent Orange that destroyed all these vets' lives. My brother said, he was in Vietnam, and they're rolling out Agent Orange. And somebody goes, is that shit safe? Because, you could smell it. It smelled toxic. And this guy, this drill sergeant, one of these tough guys, sticks his fucking finger in it and puts it in his mouth and licks it. His finger's wet with glyphosate, with Agent Orange. And he stuck his finger in his mouth with this stuff on it. So that guy's dead. I mean, he'd be dead anyway from old age. But, I mean, this is what's going on. And so they killed troops. People suffered, and they didn't compensate them. They didn't test these things out, right? One of those Casey and Callie Means who seem to be also controlled opposition. The reason they can have controlled opposition, because even if the information comes out, there's nothing they're going to do about it. But what they said was, one of these Means, brother and sister, was that there's 500 different chemicals that are in food that have never been tested to see if they're harmful. Because they allow people to add chemicals in food, and if then there's an issue, then they look into it, which is ass backwards way of doing it, right? It's crazy to do it that way. And so we have all these chemicals in our foods that probably causing problems, but it's not enough of a problem that's been recognized. And then they're like, oh, I better take that out, right? But how much damage has it done? So you have all these environmental issues with toxins in our foods and in our medicine. And then you have these powerful lobbying groups that can prevent the information from going out and then them being accountable. And, you have these vaccine courts, for example, where the pharmaceutical companies are protected. So even if the stuff does hurt people and, you go through the completely rigged system against being able to prove what the pharmaceutical companies are doing, they're still protected. And so it's completely fucked. So RFK Jr. knew what was up when he was doing these interviews, and now we'll see what he can say or what he can't say. But even if he says it, the media and everyone else will cover it that's just wrong. We're ignoring it. And here's the case in point. So I told this story the other day. My wife got a text message. She was, contacting somebody, a friend that she doesn't have all that much contact with. And her friend said her husband died. He had, was having a little bit of trouble breathing. It turned out he had pneumonia. But he went into a hospital. They diagnosed him with COVID. They gave him too much blood. And his lungs filled with blood. They put him on a respirator. He got sepsis and he died within 24 hours. He walked into the hospital and they fucking murdered him, right? And so then she had a phone call last night with the woman. And it's fucked. Now, this woman and the husband were anti-vax. They were like Republicans. They were, they were concerned about, some of the things, right? So they weren't all in on the American medical system. The woman's our age. She's a little bit younger than me, 57. And her husband was like 10 years older. So he was close to 70. And they both got sick, and he was having a little bit of trouble breathing. And so they go to the hospital for some antibiotics. And the nurse at the hospital is a bitch. Like, she's just being really rude. And they're about to walk out because they both have a bad feeling about it. And she goes, if you leave, he'll be dead with a heart attack within an hour. Like, that's what this fucking nurse said. They haven't diagnosed him with anything. And so, he's he's able to walk into the hospital. He's sick, he's got pneumonia, which is a tough thing. He's an older person. And so they admit him into the hospital and they separate him from his wife. And at some point, there's this idea that he was throwing up blood, which his wife said that didn't happen. And even if it did, they put 2 pints of blood. Now, when you go to a blood bank, they take 1 pint of blood out. So we know that, they can take 1 pint of blood out and it doesn't affect you, right? Like, it's only 1 pint of blood. So, and he didn't throw up 2 pints of blood. Like, he didn't throw up at all as far as his wife knew. And so she hadn't thrown up at home blood. And so maybe he had some blood in his mucus or something like that. She doesn't even know where that came from. But then they say if they don't give him this transfusion, he's going to die again. So twice the hospital has said he's going to die. And they have to sign off on the blood. And because he didn't need the blood, the extra blood ends up going into his lungs. And now he's in trouble. Now has an issue. So the hospital hooks him up to the respirator. And, he goes from being just like needing antibiotics or something to going into the ICU and then the CCU, the critical care. So now he's a critical patient. He's on the verge of dying. And they hook him up to one of these respirators. The respirators killed 9 out of 10 people. And there was all these nurses that came forward, shills or not, I don't know. But they came forward saying they were dropping like flies. The respirators were killing people. Their bodies were rejecting it. And, they had put these respirators in the hospitals right before COVID. So, like, they knew it was coming. And they were putting these people on respirators and they were dying. And when I got COVID, I said, my wife and I are like, we're not going to the hospital and we're not going to get put on a respirator. Because, like, no matter how much trouble I have in breathing, I ain't doing that shit, right? And so they diagnosed this guy with COVID even though he didn't have COVID. And they fucked this up. This happened to my wife's mom, who was a doctor herself. And she went in for cancer, and they flooded her kidneys. Like, the hospital did 3 or 4 things that were like lawsuit issues. And she knew about this as a medical person, but she was so bought into the system, she got turbo cancer, the whole thing, right? But, this thing that happens to people happens quite often, where you go to the hospital and they fuck you up even worse, right? Do no harm. And so they've diagnosed this guy with COVID. 5 people were diagnosed with COVID, in a time of year where, no one's having it. Like, and the COVID that people get now is so mild, they don't need to go on a fucking respirator. So the guy goes on a respirator and the wife says, can we just take it off? His kids are here. We want him to talk to them. And the guy's trying to talk and he can't. He's got the respirator on. And they go, if we take him off the respirator, he's going to die. So 3 times they say to her, he's going to die if you don't go forward with this. So they're scaring the shit out of him, right? And then he does die. And she goes to talk to somebody. She goes, oh, did you have Dr. So-and-so? Dr. Death. And they're like, yeah, that guy does this all the time. And he's like fucking murdering people, right? I'm not laughing at it's fucking brutal. And, we should all know by now that this protocol for COVID, the hospitals should be forbidden for doing this. And, this woman will hopefully sue the hospital and will probably win, and insurance will pay for it. And they're not going to condemn this doctor, even though, like, he's known at the hospital for killing people. Like, I mean, they were implying that this guy does this shit all the time, right? There was the stuff where they censored us all. They were giving us medical misinformation things. Remember when all that stuff happened? And, things that you couldn't say. And you couldn't criticize certain agencies, which is completely fucked. YouTube, and I stopped making videos because I didn't know what to say. You couldn't talk about what you did, what I did when I got COVID, the natural remedies and things that I did. I didn't do ivermectin. I did other things. But you couldn't talk about those things as well. Like things that I've learned since then. And I have all these videos. I put up some of them on whatever it is, fucking that other Rumble or whatever. That was a nightmare. It got no views and whatever. And I was, I've been wanting to try to do these things. I have the videos somewhere else. I might put them up on my backup channel. But I don't know what YouTube will still allow you to say. And, nobody could criticize the system. And then it came out that everything they told you was bullshit. Everything they did was bullshit. Like it was all fucking lies. And I said in the beginning, if they mishandled autism, why would you trust them for this? Mainstream medical, because it's for-profit medicine, right? They make money with you being sick, you being chronically ill, and all these other things. And so, it's just right there in front of everybody. It's for-profit medicine. And, they're not healers. There's a difference between a doctor and a healer. And I've been lucky enough to find doctors that were healers at times in my life when I needed them. Allopathic doctors, and they're better, right? Because they're trying to heal the patient. And, and my wife was saying that back when she was younger, this is going back to what I was saying earlier in the video. When she was a kid, younger in your 20s, she trusted the government. And so you didn't need to pay attention to politics because you would be like, well, there's some nominal differences between the Democrats and the Republicans, but these still are good people. And then, the media as well. But at some point you wake up to the fact that the people who are running the system, if you think about building a nuclear weapon and dropping it, because that's going to kill hundreds of thousands of civilians. Like the idea to build a nuclear bomb, and you can say, well, we don't want the bad guys to get it, whatever bullshit reason you have. There's no good reason to do that. Like a weapon that could destroy weapons that could destroy the earth potentially. At least wreck it, right? And so once they did that, that they'll do anything. Like once they make these abominations that, like why would you even think about doing something like that, right? And so people will do anything, and they have done anything. They've murdered, people have murdered millions of people. Billions of people now if you think about over the course of history. And you see just how mean and shitty people are, and like you say something they don't like, and they'll leave you a comment, you get in an argument with somebody, I wish you'd die from cancer. Like I had a person who said, I hope you die of cancer and AIDS. That was one of my first comment videos I made. And so, over something, I could actually look that one up. Here I found it. Now, I have no idea, I don't have the video pictured here of what this comment was to. So this was, it was quite a long time ago. Let me see what it says here in terms of, I took the screenshot in 2017, so 8 years ago. Pockets of the future, you are a dipshit R-word. I hope you get cancer and AIDS. All replies are trolls. Nobody believes you, fucktard. So this was one of my first comment videos, right? But I said something. And he said that I am impaired mentally because he said a couple of times that I was stupid and a dipshit and that the comments weren't real because nobody would like what I had to say. And that even though I'm impaired in some way mentally, I'm stupider than the normal person, that he wanted me to die of cancer and AIDS because I said something he didn't like. Right? So this is where people are at. We have idiocracy, and we have people who just suck at every level from the bottom to the top. It isn't just the so-called elite. And people are way worse than they were before. And nobody's trustworthy because everyone's so fucking selfish. And we have a demonic system that's taken us in the wrong direction. And now it's reached critical mass to where, destruction is inevitable, right? And this is what I talk about, all these various things. And so the corporations will hurt people to profit from them. Medical system, for-profit medicine, for-profit food, addictive foods that make people sick, that turn people to the medical community that makes them sicker, and then they live in paired lives, and all these people make bank off of other people's suffering, and that's just the beginning of it. Of course, the weapons of mass destruction, and they have made so much money they can affect politics and political policies, and social media and regular media, so that you can't tell people the truth, and even when people hear the truth, they won't do shit about it. They'll still eat the toxic foods and take the toxic medicines. They're too lazy to look into it, even if they believe in it. I recently read some comment with some sports person who was the thing about Kawhi Leonard saying Gatorade that shouldn't be given to kids. So he took the Gatorade bottle off the podium. And somebody wrote a comment saying he's completely right, that shit is horrible for you. And in parentheses, I drink it anyway. Which should tell you everything you need to know. Somebody admits that they know that the stuff's toxic and that there's many other ways to get your electrolytes in. Many of those things are cheaper, less expensive, and of course they're good for you. But the person still wants to drink Gatorade even though they know it's poison. The people did this with cigarettes. They do it with McDonald's foods. Trump pitching McDonald's foods and getting RFK Jr. to eat them. And so, Alcatraz and all this bullshit, everything I showed you, the fucking, the tariffs and all these things, and Kennedy saying he's getting to the bottom of autism, it's all just bullshit. Because people don't care. They won't fight back. They won't do anything about it. And this is where we're at as a country, as a species. And so collapse is a good thing, right? Like, we're addicted to poisons. We know things are bad for us and we do them anyway. How many people have an addiction that's ruined their life? Gambling addiction. See all these, like I see whenever I watch sports stuff, they all, any of these people with podcasts, if you talked about sports, let's say I did a sports podcast, which I could totally do. Like, and I'd have to watch a lot more sport. I mean, I really totally couldn't do it because, but I know enough about it that I could talk about it. I talk about it here from time to time. And I can say compelling things that would make people listen to me. The way I'd have to make money would be hook up with a sports betting company and encourage people to gamble, which I don't believe in, because gambling is, by the odds, you're doing something that you're going to lose. The odds are against you. The odds are in favor of the house, right? And when the odds are in your favor, when you're counting cards, they beat the shit out of you and they ban you from casinos. I mean, they literally grab you, beat the shit out of you. You come in with disguises. You're playing the game legally. You're doing nothing wrong. They can't even prove that you're counting cards because you're doing it mentally, but they know you're doing it. And just with that knowledge, they get some guys to beat the shit out of you. They get your picture and they make sure that none of the other casinos let you in because it's rigged in your favor. And they don't want that shit because gambling is always rigged in the house's favor. But people gamble anyway. They drink anyway. They smoke anyway, knowing what it's going to do. They eat carcinogens in their food and things that cause them cancer. You see them in Walmart with a grocery cart full of carcinogens and heart disease, and like their kids are all already obese, and people know better and don't care, and like this stuff with what happened to this poor woman and her husband, and she's going to feel bad because like she knew kind of like they were trying to leave, but the hospital like bullied her into it. You're going to die if you leave, and they killed him. Like he walked in and was wheeled out on a fucking gurney. He walked in under his own power, and within a day they've killed the fucking guy, right? I mean, so this is what happens. This is what people fucking do. This is what corporations do, and hospitals do, and governments do, and Trump does, and all this shit, and this like horrible shit, right? No sense of integrity, no moral compass, and I mean, you just see it degrading around us. So that's why I talk about this is inevitable, the collapse, because this is the more you look into it, the more you're like, oh fuck, it's this too. Oh my God, right? So I'd like to see some positive movement, sure, but in the end, only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely pointing for the apocalypse and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.